Welcome back, welcome back. At the beginning of this week, it looked like good news for Zimbabwe. Mediators in South Africa announced that the MDC had agreed to form a unity government with Robert Mugabe, with Morgan Tsvangarai to be sworn in as Prime Minister on the 11th of February. But then the MDC said that they were denying that any such deal had been reached. But now, on this very day, this very Friday, the latest news is that it appears to be back on track again, and the MDC will endorse the deal. Zimbabwe's MDC, quote, agrees to deal. This is exciting, or it's better than things were before, but what's going to happen? I'm joined now once again by African analyst Knox Chitiyo from RUSI, the Royal United Services Institute, and he's here right now. This is good news, isn't it? There's no assurance of a totally happy ending, but I mean, did this surprise you?
No, it didn't. I think it's been in the air since the SADC meeting. The enormous pressure has been put on the MDC to get on board the Government of National Unity from SADC, from the African Union, and in a sense, the MDC really has been put into a corner where either they had to join a Government of National Unity and try and effect change from within, or stay on the sidelines and probably be decimated by the state. So they have very, very little choice in this. Right,
and now it's February the 11th is still apparently the putative date. He will be Morgan will be the Prime Minister. Who will be the two other most important names in that cabinet on his side?
Well, it's still early to tell exactly who they're going to put within the cabinet, but certainly, you know, the MDC number 2 is Tendai Biti, who one expects will have a role to play, and there's also Priscilla, who is also in the MDC. But it's very hard to tell at this stage exactly who is going to have the cabinet post.
But so what's going to happen now? I mean, will there be coherent policies within a week or two? There ought to be, there needs to be, on cholera, where the numbers are up to 60,000, aren't they, sufferers, and more than 3,000 dead?
Well, I think it's too early at this stage to talk of coherent policies or a common vision. There is as yet no common vision on how to rescue Zimbabwe. For the time being, I think what is happening is they're trying to follow the timeline. They're going to discuss and pass the constitutional amendment, which gazettes the putting in place of a Government of National Unity. So they'll be discussing more the practicalities of who is going to be in this cabinet, issues around the National Security Council legislation, which is due to be formed. Other issues, I think, will be the question of the governor of the Reserve Bank and finance and so on and so forth. So that is going to be the key thing over the next 3 weeks until the government is set in place. Once the government is in place, then comes the hard part of actually mapping out a common policy of how to rescue Zimbabwe.
And how to rescue the population from the immediate problem of cholera. I mean,
exactly. I mean, you know, we have reports that it's 60, 70,000 people infected with cholera. There have been thousands of deaths, but it's not just cholera, because also a lot of people who have cholera are also HIV positive. So it's multiple crises, and of course you've got, you know, the collapse in the civil service, the financial crisis. So it's multiple crises which need to be resolved. So prioritization is going to be absolutely key. There has to be a joint mechanism to prioritize and implement a reconstruction plan.
What will Robert Mugabe's title be then? President?
He is going to be the president of Zimbabwe. There's not been any debate really on that. He will continue as president of Zimbabwe. Morgan Tsvangarai will be the prime minister. Who has the effective...
Yes, I was going to say, if they have disagreement on something, who wins?
Well, it's the agreement of the global political agreement was a little bit vague on that. But I mean, the reality is, for the time being, the balance of power will remain with Mugabe as president, and ZANU-PF still has the machinery of power. So for the time being, it's very, very clear that the ZANU-PF, I think, will retain the actual leverage in terms of power. Whether and to what extent that will change once a government is formed is very, it remains to be seen.
How important has South Africa been in this rapprochement?
South Africa is absolutely crucial. South Africa is the regional big brother, and nothing will move in terms of resolving Zimbabwe's conflict without South Africa's say-so. That's the reality. A lot of people are perhaps a little unhappy with South Africa's power, but that's the reality. South Africa is absolutely crucial, as is the region.
Fascinating. Well, we'll come back to that. And when we do, we'll come back to you, Knox. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Sir David.
Now, after all the fanfare of last week's inauguration, it's back to the hard grind this week. That's been the situation for Barack Obama's new administration. And a top priority, of course, was getting the US economy moving again. President Obama's $819 billion stimulus package passed its first hurdle on Wednesday as it went through the House of Representatives, but without the support of a single Republican. So, despite all talk about rebuilding a fractured nation and all that stuff, is it going to be quite soon back to straightforward partisan politics? Joining me now to discuss Mr. Obama's second week in office is political commentator here from the States, Laura Schwartz. Laura, welcome back.
Thank you, Sir David.
Do you think that the fact that no Republicans voted for this stimulus package is a disappointment or a blow, or it's too early for it to be either?
I think it's a very small disappointment. It's not so much a setback yet because the bill did pass, and the Republicans, even the ones that voted against the bill, were apologetic when they talked afterwards. They were very impressed. Barack Obama did something that other presidents rarely did. Earlier this week, he went up to the Capitol. He went to the members of Congress, the Republicans and the Democrats, to give his pitch. Now, the Republicans held true to their base and said they would not enlarge the government. The Democrats put it through the House. But next week, this does go to the Senate. In the Senate, they are expected to get some Republican support. And then when it goes back to the House next week, in the full form of the bill, there are some Republicans that they expect to make the vote for the bill that Barack Obama so desperately wants to have happen.
So that the mood is still very good, even if the Republicans stuck to their guns or whatever. The mood is still good.
Yes.
The body language is still
You know,
good.
Barack Obama came into office last week with the highest approval rating of any president coming into the office had ever had before. Even the Democrats in Congress, who usually Congress faces a 20–30% approval rating, are at over 50%. But I'll tell you what, Sir David, that is going to be very interesting to watch. The Republicans, their approval rating is around 26%. Very low. In fact, it really matches President Bush's rating when he left office. So they have to realize that the country that wants this economic stimulus plan, a president right now that has huge popularity, and he will leverage that popularity to get his bill through, they don't want to hurt themselves down the road when they run for re-election. The Republicans have to be very careful how they play this hand that Barack Obama is dealing to them.
Absolutely. At the same time, I suppose, they're obviously, they're not hoping that things will go wrong, because it would be terrible for America if they did. But I mean, obviously, if things went wrong with the stimulus package, then they could say, we told you so.
Absolutely. And we really won't know. I mean, we can forecast that the stimulus package will create or save 3 to 4 million jobs, that it secures unemployment benefits, which now in America is reaching an all-time high at 4.78. It's never been that high since it's been recorded in the 60s. And so we don't know if this is going to work. We can speculate. We have the economists saying that it will work. We have even the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office saying that this is our best chance. But if it doesn't, 2 years from now, when these members are up for re-election in their home states, they could really benefit from having voted against it. But in the short term, you have an American public that desperately wants to get back on track. And when somebody votes no in Congress at what may be the best shot at helping this out, it really looks bad back in their districts.
And do you think that in addition to the mood music and the language and so on, that on, say, for instance, an issue like in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians, he's indicated that he is really wanting to listen to the Muslims, etc., and so on. But do you think his policy towards Israel will change from Bush's at all? Bush was always accused of being blindly pro-Israel. Will Obama be blindly pro-Israel?
I don't believe so. And I think earlier this week in an interview when he made the two stresses, which was one, he has lived in a Muslim country, and two, he has family members that are Muslim. I think immediately he opened up the dialogue to say, I understand, this will be an important effort for me. And then, of course, President Clinton had special envoys that went to different parts of the world to keep tabs and to work at peace. Now Barack Obama has brought those special envoys back with George Mitchell, a son of Lebanese immigrants who has been dispatched to the region already, has met in Egypt, has met in Israel, is meeting with the Palestinian Authority, who really has taken a hands-on approach because America cannot be hands-off any longer. And they have to look at all sides of the argument in order to be an effective negotiator for peace.
But, of course, he didn't meet Hamas, did he? That's still an issue that's got to be dealt with. But,
and it'll be interesting to see perhaps how Egypt influences talks with Hamas as well. So I think really it's inevitable. And Hamas has said, even though they haven't, the United States, negotiated talks with us, we are open to the Obama presidency. And right there, I think, is such a stride from before that it does give a glimmer of hope.
And then, of course, President Obama, with his unclenching the fist images and so on about Iran, I mean, he's certainly playing a different tune about Iran.
Yes, when
compared
he said,
to George Bush.
Oh, completely, 180-degree turnaround. When he said to Iran in an interview this week, if you unclench your hand, we will extend ours, was nothing that we would have heard in the last 8 years. And I think it really said, not just to Iran, but the world, that America realizes that we must have open dialogue if we are going to get anywhere in the next few years when it comes to the nuclear proliferation in Iran, when it comes to the anti-American sentiment, when it comes to their role in Iraq. They are part of the Middle East, and we have to treat them as such and talk with them in order to really talk to that entire region. What Putin, Russia, Putin, I mean, he seemed to be making more emollient noises this week. Yes.
I've never thought of him as an implacable enemy. He's certainly an implacable supporter of his own country, but not an enemy in that sense. But what do you think? Do you think Putin from Davos was giving out green lights to Obama?
I think so, and I think it's smart for Putin to do so. I think it really is smart for any leader, as well as Obama, to give the green light that we are now talking again. You know, President Bush had said that he saw through the eyes of Putin into his soul, and then we had a deteriorating relationship with Russia towards the end of the administration, and problems when it came to Georgia and other conflicts. I think this really is a fresh start in many ways. And when Obama meets Putin and the leaders of Russia later this year, later this spring at the summit, it will be a very green light to start anew. But I believe that he's put Russia on their toes and said, we are watching you, and we are friends with your neighbors as well as you, and what you do to your neighbors affects us. So I think it'll be a strong hand, but it will be a firm handshake.
And will you, do you think, be able, after a few months of the Obama regime, will you be able to go on holiday as an American to Cuba?
Oh, well, it's really amazing how Cuba has played a role even in the inauguration. And this may seem far-fetched, but there is an ideology here. Michelle Obama wore Cuban-born, now American designers. And we've been talking about Cuba more than ever before. Going to close Guantanamo, open up relations, make travel easier. I wouldn't suspect in a few months, but within a year, I think it's absolutely positive.
And by that time, and the prices of Cuban cigars in America will rocket, won't they?
Maybe that will help our economy.
That'll do the trick, but hope they don't go up too much. But well, that's all we've got time for this week, I'm afraid. My thanks to all our guests. Do join us again 7 days' time for another Frost Over the World. All the best for now.